If you're going to be very idealistic about your approach with business, you will never be able to become successful. Business is based on capitalism, which is about competition. And competition is unfair. It has to be unfair. You have to have an unfair advantage. This I'm talking about only the college entrepreneurs, right? People who have just come out of college. I think the biggest hat tip I can give is
So I want to define what robotics is.
that entire chain of thought, what we consider common sense, what we understand very easily because of our advanced vision skills as humans. When a machine does that, that's okay.
For India to be really strong in robotics globally, do we need a very strong manufacturing base?
We can't just build a company just solely focusing on India. We have to look at global markets.
China has put frameworks around robotics, around autonomous driving, around drones, around everything.
If you were to summarize the future of robotics in the next 5 years, how do you see it changing?
With the introduction of AI, you can possibly achieve the same output without really going deep on hardware. We have a lot of these small communities where robotics founders are huddling together trying to solve problems, and it's very helpful. But it's just that they don't really understand what is venture backable. The real answer why the VC has not invested is
Welcome to the next episode of The Next Big Opportunity. As you're aware, we try and bring new founders, new ideas to the table every single time. And today, this episode, we're going to cover the opportunity in robotics, of course, how AI is changing the game in robotics, and overall, what opportunities we are seeing in India or India to the globe. Today, we have with us two founders who are taking a stab at tracking the robotics from India or in India, whatever way you want to call it. So today, I have with me Farid Ahsan, who is the founder CEO of General Autonomy. Farid, welcome to the show. If you can just talk about your background, where you're from, how you get started. So we'd love to know your background.
Thank you, Manav. I started General Autonomy along with my co-founder Bhanu about a year and a half ago. And before that, I've been an entrepreneur. Used to run this company called ShareChat and Moj. Those are like two leading content apps based out of India, built in India. And I graduated from IIT Kanpur in 2014. So for me, building in India, building for Bharat, building for India, building from India, it's one of the same thing. Started with internet and content because honestly, back then that was the best opportunity. If I would have started back then in hardware, we would have faced a lot of troubles. I'm sure our friend here can tell about how hard the journey is when the ecosystem is not ready, and we felt the ecosystem wasn't ready then. But sometime around 2 years ago, we felt the Indian ecosystem is gearing up for a hardware revolution, and we are very well placed along with our interest and intent in AI and the developing AI ecosystem. And yeah, with that, we just started this new venture focusing on improving industrial automation and robotics, not just in India, but from India, anywhere in the world.
Understand. Thanks, Preet. And we have also Pramod Ghadge, who has actually just come from Pune. Thank you very much, Pramod, to be here. And we'd love to know your story. Obviously, e-commerce background. Again, we have B2C experience, and then you now started in robotics. So we'd love to know more about you and what's your story, Pramod.
Thanks, Manav. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting us. So my story actually starts from manufacturing. So I did my engineering BTech in 2012. And then I was involved in more of an aerospace manufacturing and new product engineering at L&T. So more of a conglomerate corporate kind of a background. I got bored there after spending some time, and I wanted to study abroad. So I went to Singapore to do my master's. This is where I got more exposure to startups. So there they used to have a lot of these entrepreneurship programs. They selected me in one of the programs where they could give some grants to build your own startup. We had some failed attempts back then, 2015. I happened to meet Flipkart's leadership team in Singapore in 2015. They were building the automation team back then. So it was a very small team looking after pan-India automation. So I took that opportunity. It was very it was accidental come back to India. I was not planning to come back to India that soon. I joined Flipkart. I spent about 3.5 years there. My role was kind of on the other side of the table than what we do today. So we were the customers of robotics companies. We were working closely with robotics companies, India as well as outside India. And our job was to evaluate them from technical as well as commercial angle, convince the internal people, take the budget approvals, deploy them, and hand over to the operation. So this is where we saw gaps in the industry, which processes have a lot of scope to improve. There have been a lot of warehouse robotics companies globally, but the penetration of automation is still very low. It's only about 20%. If you look at developing market, it's even lower. So, and even within that, you still see a lot of gaps within the existing solution. So we felt that, can we build something fundamentally different than what these guys are doing? So this was a call we took in 2019 along with my other co-founder Shahid. So we met each other in a program called Entrepreneur First. It's a deep tech fund based in UK. So Shahid had a background in multi-robot systems and I had a background in warehouse automation. So we had a very complementary skill set. So we felt that let's start something together. So we were like two founders. Then we had more people joining us. Over the last 6 years, we went from the concept to product prototyping to like pilots to actual enterprise level deployments. So we have delivered more than 230 robots across India, Europe, US, largely present in India and Europe. We are now doing 4 times we are looking at 4 to 5 times scale this year, as we have seen massive traction coming from existing customers as well as new customers signing up. So we generally work with e-commerce, retail, logistics companies. Our deployments are generally happening in their fulfillment centers, last mile hubs, mid mile hubs, and these are multi robot systems. So it's not like a single robot. Generally it's a 20, 50, 100 plus robots sold together in one warehouse. That's what we do. We are based in Pune. We are a full stack player. Like he is also building hardware. We are also in software as well as manufacturing. So we have our own manufacturing unit where we make the robots.
So I think just for the audience also, I want to define what robotics is, because
Yeah.
as a common man, robotics is coming from movie, right? Humanoids, and it started
Yeah.
with Terminator, and now we're seeing in every movie.
Yeah.
And then you have Chinese trying to,
Yeah.
robot is running the race, and
Yeah.
it didn't win the race, but it reached somewhere.
Yeah.
So when you talk, so let's look at the opportunity of robotics, right?
Yeah.
You of course give example of B2B. I know I went to your office. Thanks for hosting us, Farid.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated to see what robots can do and how they can coordinate. So if you can tell us, how do you look at robotics as a market, right? B2B, B2C, where the evolution is overall. It'll be good to understand the opportunity of robotics as such.
Yeah, I think the simplest way to look at it is any machine is an automation, but when the machine can take decisions on its own, it's a robot.
Okay.
And that essentially boils down to how good a software you've written, how good sensors you've put so that the machine can perceive the environment better and then take calls. And sometimes the machine has to take very, very long horizon calls, long horizon tasks they have to solve. When I say long horizon, it means like sequential 10 tasks, one after the other, which may look trivial for a human, but for a robot, they are very complex. But you string them together and an action gets completed. For instance, if you have to clean this table, we first have to pick up all the cups, the mobile phone, get a handkerchief or cloth, then wipe it, actually place it just next to the surface and then wipe it, not hard enough that you break the table, not soft enough that you don't gather dust. And then you have to decide whether the work is done or not. So that entire process, that entire chain of thought, what we consider common sense, what we understand very easily because of our advanced vision skills as humans, when a machine does that, that's a robot.
In B2B, like if I draw parallels in B2B, it's similar story there as well. Like we're looking to automate whatever was done manually before. We're trying to do that in a more automated, more efficient manner, so that let's say you do lesser mistake or probably zero mistake, you get that let's say task done in a more faster manner. So you typically try to attach that particular, let's say, automation with some kind of cost savings, some kind of speed improvements. So it's more metric driven, where companies take call on payback period, savings, then they are okay to deploy robotics. So there it's more of a number game. Like just because you have a fancy robot, you cannot technically deploy a robot in a company, because already these logistics companies are at a very thin margin. So you're trying to squeeze that every single penny by improving the efficiencies. And then this is where robotics is playing a big role. In the last 10 years, it has evolved. The costs have come down to build the robot. The manufacturing ecosystem has scaled up as well. And the robots are able to take decisions on their own with very little or no intervention from people or humans. So we are also doing the same thing. We have focused on a certain segment of supply chain. So so supply chain or warehouse robotics is vast field. Every process is a big market.
So can you give an example of a use case, a few customers?
So what we do is today we largely focus on automating the sortation process in warehouses. Okay. So sorting happens for different reasons. Let's say a fashion retailer wants to sort packages as per stores. So they may have 1,000 stores in the country, or let's say maybe a maybe Europe, for example, they may want to sort packages as per different stores in different countries. Or it can be an e-commerce player who wants to sort packages or as per unique order IDs. So let's say you ordered a shirt and jeans on, let's say, some e-commerce company. They don't want to send you two different packages in a different delivery, let's say two different routes, right? So they want to combine it. So it's called order consolidation or batch sortation. So that also is done by our robots. Or it can be outbound sortation. It can be, let's say, a logistics company wants to sort packages as per pin codes or delivery hubs or mid-mile hubs. Again, it's a sortation work. Or it can be reverse supply chain. So let's say you don't like the shirt, you want to give it back. So somebody has to come and sort that package back to the original warehouse. So again, sorting is involved. So what we have built is we have gone deeper into a process, but we are going horizontal in terms of the applicability of these systems. So we are not restricted to only one type of a hub or a facility. We are going live in first, mid, or last mile, but we are very, very focused on sorting.
I understand.
We do have plans to look at other adjacent processes. We already have started working on other adjacent verticals because we have built a lot of subsystems while building this product. So our idea is to use that and build other complementary setups.
And some of your customers are like Flipkart and retail
So
chains and
similar to like customers like DHL, fashion retailers, Flipkart, some of the marketplaces in Europe. They are now our large customers.
So what percentage of human labor are you able to replace when you think about these processes now?
Yeah.
So let's say sorting, just can you give us an example?
If you look at a thumb rule, generally, like if you are doing something manually, we are able, let's say your productivity is X, we are taking that to around 3 to 5x. So for example, if you needed 20 people to do certain work, probably you'll need 5 people after our system comes in. Our narrative is not about job losses or you fire the people. It's about their volumes, our customers' volumes are growing. So they can manage the growing load with the same number of people. And much more safe, much more ergonomically better, less tiring work, and then they can basically run that company sustainably, like the operation sustainably. That's what we generally aim for. So it's about 3 to 5 times jump than what is generally done manually. Yeah.
And Farid, what about you? Which use case are you focused on?
It's a multifold learning because unlike doing workflow automation or getting into exact workflow of customers, we are focused on solving a general purpose unit that you can teach anything. You can train with demonstrations, visual demonstrations, and then get it live, as soon as possible. So when you do that, you cannot actually alter somebody's workflow. You try to become a part of somebody's workflow. So apparently, like there's one project that we are going to work with Unbox itself on possibly getting mounted on as an arm, getting mounted on top of one of their robots, and probably doing some box building, box packaging, stuff like that. There are those opportunities which exist today to help us keep the lights on. Fact is that the biggest opportunity for us, for Teachable robots, is the consumer market. So we are heavily focused on getting the R&D right, getting the product right. It's a hard market because it's globally competitive. You've got Elon Musk playing the same game, so it's always hard to even imagine that you can compete with that person someday. But the point is that if we don't try, probably never get to know that if we can actually really build something.
I'm really glad you guys are trying. I'm really excited to learn that. And I think as the AI wave progresses further, is the physical world will meet the AI very soon and much more efficiently.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges you guys face doing this from India and almost for the very first time? So what are the key challenges you face? I know software we have now come far ahead in the last 20 years. Robotics, how old is that? What is the real competition? And you guys came from B2C to robotics world, right? So some color on how the challenges shape up. Or are shaping up.
So in my case, it's more of a B2B still. Even if I was in a B2C company, my role was kind of B2B.
I understand.
But challenges wise, too many challenges to talk about. Like we started in 2019. Before he started, I think you mentioned it quite well. So as an industry, I think an ecosystem in India is still very early days. We spent some time in China when we got the registration of the company. Then we spent like almost 5-6 months in China working on prototypes. The level of manufacturing ecosystem, the number of suppliers, the speed at which they can do prototyping is much higher. Of course, we are now doing it decently as well. Now it's been 6 years. So I think one challenge was on like how do you get the right talent. So with too many applications coming up and then too too many applications get rejected as well. So we had a very good high bar in terms of getting the right engineers in our team. Most of our leads who are heading the tech teams are still with us from 2019 or 2020 days. And so that was one challenge where we get 1,000 applications, but probably we'll select maybe one, two, or something like that, right? So that practical know-how is something we sometimes is missing. So we generally tend to work with institutions, in universities, get those interns, let them spend some 6 months with us understanding the actual work. It's not just a lab work, because something you build in lab may not really work in actual customer environment. So you really understand things when you actually work with the customer. So that talent acquisition has been slightly a challenge. But as people have, as we mentioned earlier, people have, like, from college days, people are now taking interest. People are staying back in India, so that is helping us. People have started to take interest in robotics, AI, so we are able to get those good engineers. Second was in the manufacturing ecosystem. So we relied a lot on our suppliers who generally are working for automobile companies or traditional manufacturing companies. So we actually chose Pune. One of the reasons was that, where it's a good automobile industry. So we are taking our manufacturing is being done by those suppliers. So that ecosystem is also maturing. Sometimes we have to handhold them, define SOPs, quality assure, like quality control and everything. So that was another angle which we are solving. And third was, I think, from customer perspective, there are a good number of customers in India, but it's a global market we are targeting. So it's not just Indian market. So technically, we can't just build a company just solely focusing on India. We have to look at global market. And the last is, like, investor ecosystem is getting mature as well, as people are now started to look towards robotics, deep tech. So now those things have started to improve. It was not that, let's say, common to have investments going into robotic sector maybe 5-10 years ago. We were fortunate to have good investors who backed us when we didn't really have a working product. But now I think people have started to take notice when we actually have started showing our customer traction and actual use case going live with customers. Yeah.
I think it's an after effect. I'll just continue from the after effect of the AI opportunity, with a lot of AI being developed. A lot of people are aware they are going to run out of jobs. Software devs have to figure out ways to stay relevant. And at the same time, AI will not be able to percolate physical world so easily. So you definitely need a physical agent. And I think that's where the entire opportunity is culminating. Currently, there's a wave of cursor for X right now, right? Like, so people are trying to find some teams, 3 people teams that can string together some AI software. But more or less all investors and all new founders are also realizing that, look, it's going to be insanely crowded. It's going to be sort of like a marketing agency, which is always essentially crowded irrespective of whatever technology you're using. It doesn't become venture fundable. And hence, both entrepreneurs and VCs, and also because of this talent, is now looking at these spaces. But yes, 2-3 years ago, I obviously didn't face the kind of challenges that Pramod and Shahid went through. Like, we were very privileged because I was a second-time founder, so I knew a lot of people. I didn't have to go through the grind that normally a first-time founder would have to. And it's honestly, you've been a founder yourself, Manav. You understand that being a founder is hard, especially in the first 5-6 years.
Yeah.
I realized that while I'm a second-time founder, hardware was still harder, right? So for somebody who's starting up for the first time in hardware, it's even today it's insanely hard. I'm not. I cannot fathom what the guys at Unbox went through. But yeah, essentially challenges are supply chain. You have to figure out whether you build it, whether you buy it, whether you lease it, how you're going to go about it. The second is capital. Nobody wants to give you money because, well, seeing an app is easier, seeing a robot is harder. Robots have been around for 40-50 years. Even right now, the best of the best people, smartest people, can't differentiate, oh, this robot is using AI, this robot is using a basic vision system, or this robot is just doing X1, Y, Z1 to X2, Y2, Z2. I think there are those challenges that people do not really understand the problem statement yet. But I think that's there with all waves, all the great waves that we have seen. Like when I started the first time, 2014, 2015, we didn't have Geo, right? We had like 80 odd million internet users in India. People couldn't fathom that, oh, share chat bana rahe, acha, kya aega? Oh, Hindi mein dekhenge log. So it's the same thing right now, that people can't fathom that, oh, this is just there, this is just about to happen. And I think that's both an opportunity and a bane for the entrepreneur, because it's an opportunity to build, but it's very hard to explain. I've been on that journey when we started, we were the first people in India to talk about D30 retention, D7 retention. I literally had used to take mixed panel dashboards to people to make them understand, look, this is how retention works, right? And these are people with $1 billion to invest. And I think the problem will be even harder with robotics, because the metrics that we look at are not necessarily your internet metrics or traditional business metrics.
A lot of education is needed actually whenever we talk to people so people have seen a lot of videos online. They feel that okay, too many companies already, but if you go deeper, actually every process is different, like, and the penetration is still very small. So on the outside it looks like okay, too many robots are already deployed.
So what are the dimensions on which education is needed?
So education as in like, so I was referring to more of an education on the investor side. Like investors
I understood. So the ecosystem has to understand.
Ecosystem has to
this
understand.
capital is one big part of it, right?
Yeah.
Because they have to come and take that
Correct.
disproportionate risk at some point in time.
I think they need to go deeper into the engineering aspects, the tech aspects, to understand the differentiation of what some companies doing over the others. Generally, I've seen like people taking a very simplistic view that okay, ye bhi kar raha hai. So it's the same company. So just because they are a robotics company doesn't mean they have a same product, right? So it might look same. There are too many points to talk about. Like generally, if you go deeper, you'll understand what exactly this A robot is doing versus the B robot is doing. And there is also a general perception that the Japanese, or if you're building something from India, aren't Japanese doing the same thing, or aren't you facing like any competition in Europe or US? Funny thing is, a lot of times we are actually one of the few ones who are actually getting the contracts against the large companies outside India, and not necessarily that these are coming from Europe or Japan or US. Mostly, some of our competition is actually from China. They are sometimes coming close to us whenever there is some kind of a tendering process or some kind of a RFQ kind of process, right? I think one reason the more companies are coming from China and India are like, I think the e-commerce boom, B2C boom is actually helping our kind of companies to build those kind of systems where huge population, huge deliveries are happening, huge number of delivery points. So naturally, warehouse robotics emerged from these markets. So you will not find many warehouse robotics companies in, let's say, US or Europe, building very, very different, drastically different kind of systems. There are, of course, some examples, but many companies have started to come from Asia, like this kind of part of geography. But generally, in the 10, 20 years ago, manufacturing, when manufacturing revolution happened, the more of a robotic arm, 6DOF kind of robotic company, like welding robotics systems started to come from Japanese or other markets. But in warehouses, we see this trend emerging from our country or China. So there are too many aspects where people typically take a simplistic view that, okay, if you're building from India, probably you're not disrupting it. Probably you're making just a copy of, okay, somebody's doing something in Europe, so you're just making it in India. So that's not necessarily the case. Of course, there are companies who make copycats of whatever is happening in the West. But there is an opportunity to build something drastically different and actually beat the international players.
So, Farid, how does the economics of robotics company work at a basic level?
I think before that, I'll just add something for what education is to be needed. There is this notion of whether a business is VC fundable. Is it an actual venture business or not? And I think most robotics companies that are there in India already as well, they don't understand whether they are venture fundable or not. We have a lot of our friends we have this HSR group here in Bangalore for robotics. We have a lot of these small communities where robotics founders are huddling together, trying to solve problems, and it's very helpful. But it's just that a lot of them are not really, they don't really understand what is venture backable. So and I think when a VC or an investor starts defining it, in that process, we'll also as founders, we'll get to know what the VC actually wants, and then you can probably expect a virtuous cycle where more founders will ship more examples which are VC backable, and more VCs will push those ideas forward. Otherwise, we'll be in an endless, constant loop where, oh, there's this company, let's say a company of 10 hackers trying to piece together a solution. The solution works. There's a pilot. There are 10 robots being sold. And then the VC comes and says, oh, you don't have a big market, or this is a commodity, or China will screw you over, and yada, 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 right? Like there's no end to that. But the real answer why the VC has not invested is they don't know. they have a fear that they'll invest in this and this will just be a solutions agency that will probably ship 5x more and just stop. Similarly, honestly, a lot of these robotics founders also don't know once they get the money what they will do with it next, because they haven't really planned. They are just trying to piece, a solution together so that they can keep the lights on, right? So I think this is the biggest challenge, and it is not just applied to VC, it's applied to founders, employees, everyone.
So you're saying, basically, if I understand both of you, saying we need to develop an understanding of how the model will look like,
Correct.
so that everybody can take educated call,
Yeah.
whether investor or founder.
Yeah, it can be still a no as an investment decision, but still at least you're taking that no decision with the proper
with
knowledge with you.
knowledge, and also
Rather than just a fear.
for the next generation of founders to come, which, like Farid, to your point, right? The people who are even starting up today, it'll also help them to understand how to think about the opportunity in a much more larger way.
Correct.
So fine, I will see what I can help you with that. figure things out and develop that. The narrative, I think, will get developed as more on companies. As we've seen that all the time in India, right? A wave comes, and then early part is always very hard. And then as it gets into a little bit more growth phase, I think the everything more starts.
In fact, I feel we have an edge. Building from India is actually a moat, I would say. Like, a lot of companies are going bankrupt. If you look at Western robotics companies, they have raised millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, but the cost of running that company is very high. So if you can get a similar or better talent in India.
So what is the edge India can have? Is it manufacturing? See, China, of course, is a manufacturing.
Talent is cheap. You get cheaper. Like you can actually run the company at probably a fraction of the total cost of somebody doing the same work in US.
Yeah, but for India to be really strong in robotics globally, or even in India, because global companies will come to India, do we need a very strong manufacturing base? What is the backbone of robotics?
So both, actually. Like, manufacturing is definitely, we cannot build something because it's a physical product, so it has to be of high standard, high uptime, especially in so for example, in our customer base, uptime is very, very key, like very, very critical. Like, you cannot go down for like an hour, because then all the chaos will start happening, right? Like, the operations will stop. So you have to really build a very good hardware which can give you a very, very good uptime, reliability. So, and for that you need a good quality manufacturing happening, and for that you need a good quality suppliers. So technically that ecosystem needs to be there, who can build with the right SOPs, right quality. Sometimes we see suppliers with so there are big suppliers who might be serving automobile companies. There are smaller suppliers who need some handholding. We may have to maybe send our own quality engineers to do the process checks. We also have our own metrics to qualify the vendor or supplier, so that if the supplier ecosystem is much more mature, our headache will go down. Right now there is a lot of headache which we take because the ecosystem is slightly it's mature, but it's not up to the mark, I would say. So a lot of handholding is required. So that ecosystem needs to improve. And second is on the talent, as I mentioned. Like, talent, I think as more people start coming in this industry, naturally more engineers will look for similar kind of jobs rather than going in a traditional jobs where they're just looking at software or let's say B2C companies, but they can also look at deep tech, robotics. Generally, you don't see too many jobs in this particular field in India. So if somebody wants to work, then they have to go outside, maybe US, Europe, or other countries. So
that definitely changing, as I was telling you. The previous podcast with the Campus Fund and Garg Capital, they are saying 50% of startups are hardware plus software, and 50% are pure software. So that's a massive change. 5-7 years back, we could see only software in the campuses. So I think that hardware wave is definitely coming. Hardware is required in many places, right? So that's why I was talking about. See, software we already have an expertise. Manufacturing is then we'll start building expertise over a period of time, including defense also, right?
Including defense.
Space defense also requires that kind of manufacturing. So I'll come back to the same questions. How does the economics of robotics company work? The reason I'm asking this, I'll elaborate. See, in software, now we've understood, like we're talking about the model, right? You develop a software with X, let's say $1 million. You see PMF, somebody pays for you, B2B or B2C, and then customer acquisition cost, and you see what is the unit economics, and after some point in time start becoming profitable, right? And there's obviously competition in this. So when we talk about robotics, right, how does the economics change? Gross margins, one of the reasons, and I'm just going deeper into more on the economic side, because that also draws a lot of people over a period of time and also draws money therefore. The software gross margin was 85-90% or 75% plus. So how does the gross margin in the robotics look like?
It depends actually where you are in the journey. If you're very early days in your initial set of deployments, your quantities of manufacturing is very low. Your costs are very high, so your margins are definitely lower. But at a steady state, it's very realistic to target like a 50 to 60% gross margin for robotics companies, at least in B2B space. If I look at, let's say, our own data or public data, I think 50-60% gross margins are very much possible. And then there are different models. People are trying robot as a service, or people are looking at sell plus service model, where you sell the system and then you charge like a recurring payments every year. RAS is also getting a lot of attention, and there also you can have a very good margins. Of course, if you add the depreciation in that, it will again go down. But without depreciation, I think you can easily target like a 70% plus margins there as well.
That's right.
That again depends on which market you are targeting. If you're targeting India, probably you may not get maybe 60% margin. Maybe you will settle down at 40%. Because the Indian ecosystem is not mature yet. So you can probably price the product at a multifold level in developed markets with some maybe more features, maybe some certifications are required. For example, in Europe, you need to have a CE certification done. Otherwise, you cannot even export. In India, you can still deploy it. It doesn't mean that you deploy an unsafe robot, but still, like, you have some compliances you need to take care of. So overall, these are the margin levels. The profitability is one more thing is we don't have to burn a lot of money. Like, if you do it well, you can actually become profitable as soon as you find that PMF and you start doing, let's say, negotiations with suppliers with higher quantities. We took some call to build certain things in-house rather than importing. So those things have started to pay off now. In fact, we will be looking at a break even this year. As we started to basically ship more and more robots. So there is a possibility of getting to profits, getting to good margins if you do certain things in-house, not buy everything basically from outside, and then do better negotiations with vendors. Yeah.
I have a completely different view. Last two questions, I really, because I think because Unbox and Pramod, they work in the AMR space, AMR AGV navigation space, where they are moving at fast speeds, shipping goods. They're essentially carrying momentum. It's a heavy machine moving at a certain speed. It can kill, right? It can cause damage. So they have to work a lot on safety, work a lot on hardware, work a lot on resilience. In our case, it's a lot more software. Our company is majorly run by software engineers. We have very less number. Like, the number itself is small, but out of them, hardware engineers are like 3 in number, right? The rest of the folks are all software. Because when you're doing manipulation, when you're trying to use hands to do stuff, it is more about sensing the object either through vision or through tactile sensors, and then planning a trajectory which may not be the same every time you're doing the same tasks. So it's a much different play from their play. And in our view, for economics, I think all 3 models make sense, whether you're doing capex plus licensing, rent to own plus licensing, or RAS. And I think, again, this is from my experience from ShareChat. When we try selling ads, for instance, you have a different offering for a large enterprise, for a mid-size enterprise, and for an SMB market. Similarly, when you have a peak period, a large enterprise may start behaving a lot more like an SMB. 3 models that I just talked about, where you can do capex plus licensing. Capex plus licensing may mostly apply to a large manufacturer, right? But a SMB player would probably be interested in RAS. A mid-tier player would be interested in rent to own, because they can add the depreciation and all. So I think all teams today will have to be very flexible with the business model, because we are seeing a global adoption of robotics, whether we are selling in the Europe or whether we are selling in India. At the end of the day, India will still have clients in the tens of thousands only. You still have to go westward to look at a larger number of clientele, right? So I think all 3 models just work fine. And in our case, it makes sense for us to probably import hardware from China and provide it outside rather than building it ourselves, because our edge lies with the software. And many times hardware edges, so with robotic arms, they've been around for 50 years or so, 60 years, right? But what really improved in the first 4 decades was the precision with which the motors could respond, or the least count of the motor, or the various parameters with which how you define accuracy, speed, reliability, repeatability, right? What has changed in the last 5 years is, with the introduction of AI, you can possibly achieve the same output in terms of all the 4 metrics I mentioned without really going deep on hardware. So that allows you to build a more stable, more mature, or a more reliable system with less reliable hardware, because your software now taking up most of the work on its own, right? And that really allows us as a company to think of profitability in a very different way, because that's when licensing is actually how we make money. That's us, making software for which we are charging money. So our robotics business then looks less like robotics and more like SaaS, right? And more like I would say developer SaaS in that regard. That, let's say you bought an EC2 instance, and then you have to buy certain services on top of it, and we are a seller of those services. Honestly, the Western world is also looking at this kind of a segment, especially for manipulation. There are not a lot of companies, because honestly, manipulation looks very boring when you see it in action. Their robots look very magical, because they're moving on the ground. They're fast, they're cute, small, tiny robots moving around. Robotic arms look hideous, right? They are like dragons, like seven joint dragon that is doing something that will probably come and harass you in some way, right? So it's more about, I don't think economics is a true problem in robotics anymore. And another wave, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience would be aware, robotic arms have gone to a place where there's something called cobots now, and majority of the cobot market is run by China, right? The Chinese players.
Can you elaborate what does cobot mean?
Honestly, it's a marketing term, but a robotic arm that can collaborate with a human, that can exist in the presence of human, that should not be bounded by a robotic cage.
Any cage or anything like that.
Is called a cobot. Why would that happen? Because the base of the robot in the earlier industrial arms was generally very heavy, and you will have very, very high torque systems being put in there. So if one of the joint fails, the ricochet from the arm can essentially destroy everything around it, right? So you would put these big robotic arms in cages, and these robotic arms were essentially found in automobile industry, or any of those
lines,
exactly, right? So those kind of industries. But when you want to go into more human assembly driven industries, like probably F&B, pharmaceuticals, electronics,
retail as well,
right? Retail, right? That's when you need to interact a lot with humans, and you can't have such violent reactions from a robot, right? And that's essentially a cobot. It's like you went from a German Shepherd to a Shih Tzu, right? It can look ferocious, but its bite won't kill you, right? So that's a cobot. Cobots, unlike the other industrial arm which you mentioned, Japanese, right? So there's apparently this company called Yaskawa, and Yaskawa ka lore hai that they invented the term mechatronics, and they are like 100-year-old company, and they're one of the biggest players in robotic arms, but they are one of the smallest players in cobots. Essentially, I think other than Universal, I don't think anybody got, and ABB. I think Universal and ABB were the only two legacy players that could take up some market share in cobots. Cobots has been completely run over by China. If you try and get a decently good cobot today from Universal, you'll end up spending 25-30 lakh rupees minimum. In China, the minimum is like 1.5 lakhs, 2 lakhs, right? So the difference is huge. And let's say your robot breaks, like the 30 lakh rupee robot breaks. What can you do? You can only cry, right? Because you have to pay another 30 lakh. Here, it breaks, get another one, get another one, get another one, right? So a company which is, let's say, into asset sweating, like which is get into RAS, robotics as a service, can actually afford to have 10 of these robots instead of one of those and rent them out. The economics are actually going to work if you are resorting to cobots. But then again, cobots have a limitation. You can't go beyond probably like 15 kgs of weight, because essentially then again the momentum with which the arm would move will make it dangerous for humans to work around, right? So there are those pockets in which the economics would make sense.
So just to add a note, so of course the economics for his kind of company will be totally different. Our case actually, so we did not have a luxury of buying something from China or any other country for that matter, right? Because we were building a very different kind of a system that has a fundamentally different way of sortation of the packages. So we had to fundamentally kind of conceptualize a very different kind of hardware, motor controllers. Even battery pack is our own design. We did not get the certified CE certified battery pack in India, even though we have a huge EV revolution. We did not get a battery pack which can fit in our robot. So we had to design our own. We used to buy something like a motor controller from US. Now we are building our own. So those decisions we had to take because we want to control efficiencies of a robot. So one is on a software piece where we are applying software algorithms on the fleet management, looking at the historical order data. How do we sort those packages in the right place, so that the traffic in the field is managed well, and you put, let's say you create like you sort more packages per hour with less number of robots. So that's where the software is doing the magic, which is somewhat inspired by how ants move and collect their food.
Yeah.
And the second thing is the physical elements, right? So we believe that in, at least in our space, having a good control of hardware coupled with software is very, very important. One is to reduce the costs and have more supply chain control, and that also brings more to us. We are able to crack that. And second is, of course, software, as I mentioned. That is definitely one of the biggest modes for robotics company, because you then have years of data. You work with customers, you sort millions of parcels, and then you get those insights and you build better algorithms. So that is definitely the case. Yeah.
Two areas I would love to know your views. One is healthcare, right? We see now robotic surgeries ads everywhere, right? So I haven't seen company in India who's doing robotic arms or robots for healthcare. Second is what's in the B2C robots, right? That's always very attractive. We had Roomba, I saw it in the home during COVID, it was very popular in India also.
Yeah.
But then company didn't do much grow after that, right? So how is the dynamics in B2C working now? Elon Musk has also announced to enter the field. So would love to get your views on that.
I think the market is huge, like it's naturally huge,
Yeah.
but the products are a bit far from getting there. It's the very early days. A lot of, like, I would say more than Tesla, I think 1X and Figure are quite ahead in terms of probably getting launched, probably getting to user homes. And what new founders and people like us also, we are also new only,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So what early stage founders can probably focus on is just staying there till these guys do all the marketing spend to make sure the market starts believing in B2C robots.
So what are the use cases in B2C which you think are imminent or in front of us?
Office boy.
Okay.
Office boy, elderly care.
Elderly care, office boy, like basically concierge, right? A house concierge. It's definitely going to happen. It's chef may be harder because chef requires some amount of visual intelligence, some amount of you can approximate ki, okay, the onion looks red, so it's most likely cooked. But how is it going to smell? You probably can't approximate there. So you need a lot more data to train on that. So probably we will not get to chefs so quickly, but we'll get robots doing our laundry, robots arranging our homes, robots cleaning,
toilet cleaning, and
Toilet
all those
cleaning.
are already happening actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of our investors has invested in one of similar companies which does toilet cleaning. So the robot can literally go open the door, do all the cleaning, and then go back and close the door. So all that thing can be done.
Yeah.
Even cooking also is getting automated to a certain extent. Like there are companies we have seen, like some robot is doing pizza making or general cooking. There have been some initial instances of Rotimatic, those initial versions where you can actually cook rotis. So yeah, this is like a first leg of the probably many legs.
And what on the healthcare side?
Healthcare, surgical robotics. Honest बात बताऊं,
Market is not that big.
नहीं, automation है, robot नहीं है.
Okay.
ठीक है, because there's a liability, there's a on the doctor to make sure that he does the right operation, right?
Got it.
So the robotic surgery robots are essentially tools. They are smarter tools that allow a doctor to sit and do a long surgery with very high precision. So it's an extension of a doctor's inherent ability to perform a surgery. And the reason Da Vinci, like the best surgical robot, is out there is because they have taken the medical representative route, which is like the traditional route. You train the doctors, you teach them, and then they will have some resistance in moving to another system. And the business is of asset sweating again, and you make money through consumables. You don't really make money through the hardware or the software. The kind of robotics or the manipulators that surgical robots use, it's not essentially motors at every joint. It's not a manipulator. It's more like cable drives and very thin cables. I cannot explain cable drive here. It will be very technical. Yeah, essentially, those are not robots, I would say.
It's like JCB machine.
Yeah. It's very precise JCB.
Precision automation. I understand.
Yeah.
So how much, for the audience or the founders who are starting today, how much is the seed capital required to start a robotics company?
Depends on what kind of robot you're building, but
of course. But what's the range? Like a software, we know typical range, right? Anywhere between $500,000 to $10 million, depending on who you are, even a little bit larger. But you can get to a PMF or first early PMF, right?
Yeah, that's enough.
We got our paid pilots done. Cumulative funding by then it was like we had raised like 6-7 million or something like that by then. By the time we had paid pilots, customer paying us.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, we had raised about 50 60 CR, roughly, something like that. In the lifetime, we have raised like 100 CR.
Understand.
And by the time, I think they still had a lot of money left with them.
Yep.
So,
do you think that debt will play a role in
definitely?
Robotics? That's another thing, right? Because software is primarily equity driven.
Yeah.
I think robotics, since you have
so that's what we are doing. So, for example, for RAS model, we are doing asset financing.
Yeah.
So we can actually sell our assets to asset financer and then we can lease it back.
Correct.
Similarly, banks are now at this scale. Now banks are entertaining us. They're willing to give debt. Definitely, like equity money, you should not use in working capital.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Your return on equity will come down.
Yeah. So that is something is definitely needed. If you're especially full stack player, if you're just a software player, it doesn't matter.
I understand.
We should try and do an angel in him right now.
And what are the steps? Are the steps to create a robotics company a bit different from a software company? So basically, I'm just trying to say, if you're a college student in the final year, how do you break down? Let's say I want to build a consumer robot. Let's say I get fancy of the consumer market. I want to build I think of a use case. I think the cost of failure is very high, right? One is time. Second is money, definitely, because once you fail in a first prototype version, then your supply. If, for example, some sensor fails or some camera fails of certain mech, again you have to buy a different mech. You need to do research. So what are the steps? I'm just trying to come to a little bit more structure for people to think through it, right? Sure. Like in software, I'll explain to you the steps you guys know, right? You think of an idea, you do a user survey or design partners, depending on B2 or B2C. Create an app or create a product that you're looking for, and people start testing it. You get to know whether PMF is coming with people sales, and so maybe I can talk about our examples. So 2019 we had just a concept on paper that this is what it will look like. We started showing this to Indian as well as global. So your concept was sorting automation, very fun, very different than what traditionally or even other robotics companies were doing. Even now, for example, even in India or outside India. We started showing that concept, so not a product, just started showing concept that this is something we want to build in the near future. Concept on a 3D or 3D diagram, and then some calculations, not just concept. So we had a proper calculation on this will be the price, this will be the savings, this will be the throughput, or let's say the output per hour with these many robots. Let's say we'll need probably 50 robots for a certain number of packages per hour. That all the math was there. We had certain price range. We started getting the feedback from customers, so in India as well as outside. This kind of gave us some confidence that this can work if we really build this as per the spec we are talking on paper. So we took some few accounts in India with let's say we work very closely with initial set of customers. We did not open this with so many customers. So we were like, okay, let's work together. We started showing milestones. So we had a problem statement, we had a benefits defined, and we had a spec defined that this is how the robot will look like, this is how the overall system will look like. So we kept getting the feedback from customers every few months or so, right? So we showed them the videos, they came to our facility, or sometimes the video demos. So that could help us build the product as per the customer actual environments, rather than building something in silos and going directly to the pilot and demos and failing. So it was more of a co-development, unofficial co-development or something like that. Like a design partner, which is that a design partner? Like you're actually getting the user, you're actually working with the user very closely over a 2-3 years period, and then introducing that product in their facility, because customers do not really want to bring in something in their warehouse which is half-baked, because their operations are at risk. So even if they want to deploy only 10 robots, still they need to integrate with their WMS, they need to involve other stakeholders. If it fails, then it's a big failure, not just money but also operational wise. So that close work with the customers was very key, and then you iterate based on feedback or based on your internal trials. We had almost like 7 iterations of the robot by the time we had a paid pilots. And then we realized that we also want to sell outside, and this robot doesn't work outside, so you have to certify that. Again, you do some iterations, you change some components, you need to certify it through a lab. Again, it passes that test, and then you can sell outside India, like in Europe or so. So again, one more iteration. So, and then now the iterations happening more of on our own learnings. We have many robots running
in different countries. So we know, okay, I need to improve this feature, or I need to now reduce my cost. So let's build this in house. So those iterations are now started to happen with us.
And time to first pilot was
It was 3 years for
3
us.
years. Okay, understand.
It was 3 years. Yeah, yeah. Again, depends on the kind of product you're building. If you're building fundamentally different, it will take long time. If it is like a minor tweak in existing robotic system, maybe it will take small time. For us, it took like 3 years, and also this was during COVID, so that is also one factor where we had many lockdowns where we could not actually go to office. So we just had to work on software and design kind of work. So that also slowed down a bit. But overall, it took 3 years to go to the paid pilot stage for us.
I think your question was around college entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Kids in their dorm rooms trying to build something. I was one back in 2013, 14. I didn't take up a job, started ShareChat right out of college. If I have to draw the parallel, at that time we could ship an app. Apps were the new cool thing. I remember Series A funded startups would take 7 months to build an app. Me and my co-founders, 7 days, you will release an app. This was good enough to excite every investor in India. अब जिससे बात कर लो, everyone knew कि हाँ, there are these mad boys who are shipping apps like crazy. And I don't know if you remember back then, Flipkart went app only before Amazon.
Yeah.
And it really allowed Amazon to come back. If that wouldn't have happened,
It was a major decision. It came out going all mobile was a major decision at that time.
Yes. And I think this was 2014 October.
Yeah.
Right. At that time, apps was the cool thing, right? So if you have to draw a parallel today LLMs are the cool thing, right? You have to use agents, you have to use LLMs. And if you can use that together to piece together some good thing, right? Some good thing, you possibly can generate attention. And then if you can iterate through it quickly, which is the very nature of software, that you can iterate through it very quickly, you can possibly get to a point where you can get some amount of funding, which can help you build your career from there.
Yeah.
There's this company which makes tail sitter drones. It's by a 19-year-old. अब वो 20 हो गया होगा, but that time when he dropped out, he was 19-year-old. You know, tail sitter drones is not known. Like India में लोग drone भी नहीं बनाते हैं. Like tail sitter is a very far off thing, and that guy decided कि I'll go after it. And I think he just recently raised a very large round from Lockheed Groom, who's like a huge angel in the US. Like he probably raised some 10 odd million. Now, one thing that stood out for him, he essentially उसने drone बनाया, बहुत मेहनत करी, and then he realized nobody understands what a tail sitter is, right? So he took another a drone photographer. He got them to use their drone to shoot his drone in flight, right? And normally nobody would do it, right? Normally people would talk about metrics, people would talk about, oh, how this can help, this can do that. And this I'm talking about only the college entrepreneurs, right? People who have just come out of college. For them, I think the biggest hat tip I can give is idealism leads to poverty. If you're going to be very idealistic about your approach with business, you will never be able to become successful. Business is based on capitalism, which is about competition, right? So, and competition is unfair. It has to be unfair. You have to have an unfair advantage, right? So you can't be idealistic in your approach to business. Vis-a-vis when you're doing B2B, you would, if you're right out of college, if you're going to do B2B, you're going to suck at it. You're going to lose. You're going to have no chance at winning for the next 4 or 5 years, because you don't know the people, you don't know the process, you don't know how to work. You just don't know how to follow a plan, follow an do a scrum, just attend a meeting. You don't know anything, right? You don't know how to file Jira tickets, right? So you can't really build automation so well, or workflow automation or process automation or operations automation so well when you are in college. So I wouldn't recommend them to do that. But people who still want to be idealistic should do it. You know, it's a long thing, but it gives you money. Like in his case, for instance, you know, he was at Flipkart, right? Because he had that exposure, he had that experience. He knew how Kiva Systems, which is like the only successful exit. Now, Covariant is also there, right?
Yeah, there are now many exits, but during 2012, they got acquired for around $700 million, and with the very early days of revenues.
Yeah.
With not many customers, right? So in those days, they got that valuation. So, and then a lot of companies started to come in that space, including like some of the companies in India as well. But yeah, I think he's right in terms of understanding how the process automation. There are too many. It's not just about building a prototype that works, because it has to work in a certain environment. There are too many integrations, safety protocols. Then again, your software needs to be safe. You need to GDPR compliant. Too many other compliance requirements are there. You need to convince automation, finance, and supply chain. A lot of many people. How you talk to them, how you present your system. You're competing against other global players. So it's not anymore about just the product. Then it's also other angles, right?
I think the good news is that we have a lot of risk capital flowing with young grads also now.
Yeah.
So I think that is good part, and something always good comes out of
Yeah.
it, right? If there's one failure, there's also
Yeah.
multiple successes that comes out, and you have the room to pivot, right?
Correct.
You are very young, and you
Yeah.
can
The other good thing is there are certain good companies. Like we were also fortunate to have some companies like Flipkart or some other global companies who actually took I wouldn't say bet, but they took some, let's say, initial calculated risk of allowing us to do pilots, give feedback. So some of those companies are like at the forefront of deploying robotics.
Yeah, that I'm definitely seeing general change in India. I think generally the corporates or the companies are now beginning to work with the founders much more than they did before.
Yeah.
So last 3-4 years, the change has been tremendous.
Yeah. I think the fintech ecosystem has played a huge role in that.
Mhm.
The fact that Razorpay has tied up with all the banks, JustPay has tied up with all the banks. All these players have really opened up the, the, sorry for this, but old uncles of the ecosystem to start believing in the young boys.
Yeah.
So
we have come a long way in the belief in the startup ecosystem for sure.
Yes.
So what if you were to summarize the future of robotics in the next 5 years? How do you see it shaping up?
India?
Globally, I think what I'm saying is, do we see humanoids in our daily lives?
Oh, yes.
How far are we from it?
In 5 years, yeah, you will see tourist guides for sure. You will see...
So some penetration.
Yeah. You'll start seeing them. They won't be omnipresent. I think that will probably take 15
That will take time.
Yeah, because mass market, like, see, there is a market of 1 billion humanoids for sure.
Yeah.
Everyone wants one in their home. It's essentially the slave market. Sorry, again, a very controversial take, but that's something that humans figured out of need, that you had somebody who was uneducated coming from a oppressed background, and you could oppress them further to extract work out of them. And on the back of that, the entire industrial revolution happened, and then we got rid of it, and then we figured out automation, and we're going back there. Right, so the market is going to be bigger. The good part is this time you don't have to be guilty. You're not doing something wrong. You're just doing work. You're making a machine do the work. So I think the market is going to be like billions of humanoids easily. Will take 15 years because humans do a lot more things than just using desktops, right? Or let's say if LLMs have taken so long, they're essentially just a distillation of human language or human knowledge that we have probably collected over the last 5,000 years. But when robots move around, that's physical movement in the physical space. That's billions of years of evolution by nature that you're trying to distill into a system. So it's going to be harder. It requires a lot more data. But is it inevitable? Yes, of course, any day, right? And in 5 years, we will see humanoids in almost all parts of the world. Of course, the concentration will be different. Like for instance, even right now, people have not adopted, for instance, ChatGPT in remote areas of India. They don't know. They don't know that it exists, right? Technology will take its own adoption curve. But yes, we'll start interacting with robots in our daily lives in 5 years, everywhere.
Wow, that's very fascinating. Fascinating to hear. And you consider the whole this autonomous cars and autonomous also part of robotics? The whole...
So autonomous car, I've actually looked at that space.
It's also a very big space, right? The whole autonomy. Obviously, your company name is General Autonomy.
Yeah. So we actually started with the idea that we'll put driverless car kits in heavy earth machinery because we saw that there's a big gap in getting poclane drivers or JCB drivers in India. It's a huge problem right now in India. But then we decided to not do it because of some economics reasons. Like it felt like a smaller TAM at that point. But the point being key for robotaxi right now with Tesla's, I think 500,000 cars deployed. I think they generate about 10 million to 20 million kilometers every day, or maybe 10x of that. Maybe I may be wrong by an order of 10.
Yeah.
Is it either 20 million or 200 million kilometers a day? That's what they generate. And out of this, so essentially when you're driving on road, right, it's boring. Nothing new happens. Most of the video that you can collect is going to be repetitive, same and easy because everyone drives safe. Once in a while, somebody decides to leave their cattle on the road or just swivel around or just be bad driver that day, right, for whatever reasons. And when you can add up all those data points to a model that can learn from visual representation. I think that's the point where you start getting that L3, L4 level of autonomy in the car. And today, is it feasible to build that in India? Yes. But what will it take? It will possibly take us thousands of cars roaming the streets of Bangalore every day for the next 5 years.
So data is a barrier, basically.
Yeah, data is the only I think rate limiting agent in this entire process, even for manipulation, even for locomotion, for everything. I think these guys are closer to robotaxi because their robots do navigate around and they are wheeled. Yeah, we've got creepy hands.
Generally, I'm bringing this topic up for the people to really understand how that's also a big part of robotics. There's a lot of innovation there, and Chinese are doing a good job. BYD has come from behind.
Yes,
And
that's correct.
and now they are everywhere, right?
I think only thing like, so our cities are not structured, so that's the problem.
Right.
It's not easy to even like get to collect that data. You need to deploy a taxi or a car, and there's too many unorganized or unstructured kind of environment, right? So
Actually, on that, it's actually we can get there faster
because
because we
there
are
are too many-
unstructured.
that's actually
There's
correct.
too many data points are there.
Yeah,
Yes.
too many data points in short span of time.
Yeah.
Probably you'll have one accident in few days in US. Here it's few hours.
Exactly.
And cars
You
brushing.
can accelerate bad things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good insight actually for people to think about who are thinking about newer ideas all the time.
Yeah. So the one challenge will still remain. I think India very well defined something called an intermediary liability long ago for internet companies. I don't know, a lot of people may not be aware, but there was this company called Bazi.com,
Yeah, I know.
founded by
Avnish and-
Avnish and from Matrix, right?
Sumit and Suvir,
Right.
huh?
In the early days, this is earliest days of e-commerce in India, and apparently something got sold on their website which they weren't aware, and because it's an e-commerce and any seller can come and sell anything, and they ultimately had to spend time in jail. Similarly, I think when ride hailing was taking off, I think Bhavesh from Ola also had to go through that thing, right, with the authorities. So I think one of the things that the government needs to do is to set out frameworks. China has done that very well. China has put frameworks around robotics, around robot or autonomous driving, around drones, around everything. They have a framework. They have a method with which a business can approach the problem statement, chase it down without the fear. Oh, am I doing something illegal? Am I taking up somebody else's space? Am I encroaching on something which I should not encroach on?
Yeah.
Right? And robotaxi is one prime example of that. Like, of course, there are loopholes that you can keep a training driver there, and where every 10 seconds he's just touching the steering, and that works, right? Because you're essentially saying that the car is not driverless. But you can only go to a certain level with these loopholes. You really need a good framework, for us to innovate rapidly and try out things. For instance, drone policy. It's been there in the working for so long. Zipline is launching drone delivery in the US. China is already doing drone delivery from COVID times. And here we are doing drone shows on Shark Tank, right? So we have, it just doesn't add up.
I remember we were working on different technologies in Flipkart back like 5-6 years ago, like almost almost 3-4 years ago. Sorry, 2018, somewhere around that.
Yeah.
So we were working with like some of the drone companies, and even like we had to take some permission. Actually, drone delivery was one of the use cases. The second was surveillance of the warehouse where the vehicles are coming and all. So we had to take a permission from the police, and then even the police did not know how to react. Like we were supposed to take some permission, and he's like, "Hum log ko kya karna hai?" Like what he's supposed to do. So that awareness needs to be there. I'm guessing maybe it's much more mature now, but I think this is definitely a valid point. Like government authorities need to have a certain framework where people can actually try out these things. Because I remember like we used to look at these use cases. We had gone to China when we were in Flipkart. There we had tested something like a delivery drone which can drop Coca-Cola or something like that, working with one of the robotics companies there. But they are much ahead in terms of the level of penetration or maturity they have in drones or similar other autonomous cars, for example.
See, policy framework, we may not realize, plays a very big role in innovation. See, if you look at the UPI, revolution would not have happened unless a policy enabled it, right?
Precisely.
That one decision, that overnight of demonetization, really give a flip to the entire UPI. That's why we have such a big adoption in India. So I see policy is going to be very important. Even AI safety, regulation, data, privacy, all that is going to be important. I think India will catch up as usual. I think a little bit more time for us to get there.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole narrative is. I think more people like you come on board and start new things.
The best part is that India will do anything that is imminent. If it's going to happen, India will do it. It's just that sometimes we are not first movers, and that creates some level of unhappiness amongst young founders who then decide to apply to Y Combinator and then flip their company and then move there, then come back. Then they realize they can't do sales. They come back to India and then they do sales. They make it big. Then they have to flip their company back and do an IPO in India. So and it's just because somebody was lazy with the frameworking, right? So if the framework could have been there, the person wouldn't have gone in the first place.
Or we need our own version of Y Combinator, either which way. Maybe
वो तो सर आप बनाएंगे सर हम
somebody will, I'm sure. I think the issue is going to come down to risk capital. I think now obviously massive penetration of capital, so I think it's going to continue to grow. And all of us who have some money, I think a lot of founders are investing. As you said, we can do angel investing in this company, for example, any other company. That's also increasing in India. So I'm sure that will happen. So thank you very much on that note. I think we had a really good conversation. I'm sure a lot of takeaways for people who are listening to this podcast. But I'm really fascinated with the world of robotics, and especially where physical world is meeting the AI. I'm sure a lot more new companies are going to come. And I'm sure we will have a framework of soon for investors also. So the investment can happen at a faster pace. It's beginning to happen. But I think it'll happen in a faster pace in the next, coming few years. Thanks guys.
Thanks for hosting us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.